Morning, Bill.
Morning.
Good to see you once again.
Nice seeing you again.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so we spent a couple days hanging out earlier this week, and it was a pleasure. So thanks for having me over. We talked a lot about data warehousing,
Yep.
but I think for listeners, it would be good to maybe explain some of the background of data warehousing. I feel like there's still confusion to this day for some reason about what a data warehouse is, maybe differences with different brands or types of data warehouses and so forth, or by name. So why don't we get into it? What's a data warehouse?
A data warehouse is a repository of data that has been collected typically across many applications. The thing that's unique about the data warehouse is that it represents what we can call corporate or enterprise data. There are different people that need to see different things in the corporation. Applications need to see application data, but people like accounting, finance, sales, marketing, and management need to look across data across the entire corporation. And in order to do this, they need to gather data from many different applications and integrate the data. So the data in the data warehouse is a place where you can store data for the corporate enterprise-wide view of data.
And maybe walk us through the progression of how you came to the data warehouse. Like, what was it like? What was the world like before, and around what time did you come up with it, and then what inspired it?
Uh, I started thinking about the data warehouse in its early vestiges in effectively 1983. I wrote an article in a magazine, Database Programming Design, that talked about the difference between operational data and analytical data. At the time, the world was building lots of transaction processing applications. And at that time, it was thought that data was only useful for processing transactions. And at that point today, this is funny. We laugh at this today, but it wasn't funny at the time. At the time, the notion that there should be another use of data other than transaction processing was a heresy. And so that was the start. The first article that I wrote that really started my thinking was in 1983. And from the notion that there should be a difference between transaction data and analytical data led to the thought process of, well, gee, what is the difference between transaction data and operational and analytical data? And then that led to the notion that, gee, we've got all of these applications creating transaction data. What do we need to do to turn it into useful information for the organizations in our corporations that need to look at enterprise data? So that was the early origins of the data warehouse.
And what happened after that? How did it start gaining traction?
Well, it was kind of interesting. The vendors at the time, no names mentioned, the vendors at the time were very dead set against the data warehouse. And the technicians of the day and age did not support the idea of data warehouse at all. In fact, they laughed at it and gave all kinds of reasons why we couldn't have it. The real audience that data warehouse served in the early days was the marketing audience because the people in marketing recognized the value of being able to look at data across the enterprise. And for the first 2 to 3 years of my experience with data warehousing, we really talked exclusively to nothing but marketing people. And then one day, I don't know how this happened, but one day suddenly the IT community began to catch on. But in the very early days, it was the marketing people that were the champions and people that understood and supported data warehouse.
Yes, and you're telling me it seemed surprising, but it was kind of a hard go at getting the initial traction in it. And And I thought it was interesting when he sold it to the business. Um, and spoken, I guess, in business terms, he finally started seeing success with it because it seems on the surface, it seems like selling to technicians would be the obvious route, but I guess it wasn't.
I can tell you the exact story. The very first data warehouse was done by a cellular organization, Pactel Cellular, in Orange County, California. And for whatever reason, the people at Pactel decided to build a data warehouse, and that was the very first one. Now, this was in the early days of cellular telephone, in which the different cellular companies were going crazy over market share. And sure enough, Pactel Cellular, but by the way, Pactel Cellular is now part of McCaw Communications. So if you were to look them up, you wouldn't find them, but they were absorbed by McCaw Communications at a later point in time. But in the early days, the other marketing cellular companies came along and found out that, oh my gosh, Pactel Cellular has this secret weapon called a data warehouse. And so we have to have one. And I think it's kind of interesting because the way data warehouse was sold into the cellular companies was not from the vendor, was not from the IT organization, but was from top management going down to the IT community and saying, we need a data warehouse because we need more market share. Now, from the cellular companies, other organizations began to adopt data warehouse. One of the most notable ones was Walmart. In Sam Walton's book on the success of Walmart, he mentions data warehouse, and he talks about how Walmart was able to track the SKUs that they have in Walmart. And so it went from cellular companies, and then you can imagine once Walmart began to espouse data warehouse, then all of the other retail companies did. And then from that, it has spread today to practically every large organization out there. Any organization that needs enterprise data, any organization that needs their accountants, their marketing, their sales, and their finance people to look across the enterprise needs a data warehouse today and will need one tomorrow.
That's good. And so I think there's some questions. I often find people saying a data warehouse is a technology. Um, is a data warehouse a technology?
A data warehouse is decidedly not a technology. A data warehouse is an architecture and a concept. You can implement a data warehouse with many different technologies. You can put it on the cloud. You can put it on premise. You can put it in a database if that's what you want to do. You don't have to do that. And so no, a data warehouse is not a technology.
Another question I see is, the Ralph Kimball's approach,
Yes.
Bill Inman's approach to data warehousing. Can you walk people through the distinctions of these two?
Ralph Kimball, whom I've worked with and known in my first conferences on data warehouse, I always invited Ralph Kimball. And so let me clear this up from the beginning. From the very beginning, Ralph Kimball and I have been very civilized, friendly people. I haven't seen Ralph in a long time, but Ralph and I have never had a crossword between us. And you would think from some of the things you read in the press that we were at each other's throats. That is anything but the truth. However, after data warehouse began to be popular and began to take hold in the world, Ralph wrote his books. Now, Ralph has a different concept, and I don't really call it a data warehouse at all. It's really something called a data mart. A data mart is something that is specialized for a department's analytical needs, such as the accounting department. You take your base data and customize it for the accounting department, and that turns into a data mart. Even Ralph's technical conceptual underpinning is different than a data warehouse. Ralph does something called dimensional modeling or star schemas, and this is for customization for a given department. So a data warehouse is something that contains integrated granular data for your corporation, and a data mart is something that contains information that is customized for the analytical needs of a given department.
Why do you think people get confused with the word data warehouse? 'Cause I see sometimes data warehouse is associated with um, Kimball's dimensional model, and other times with the data warehouse that you described. Where do you think this confusion comes
Joe,
from?
there are probably 15 answers to that question that you have, but I'll try to answer a few of them.
Okay.
One thing that Ralph did was he called a data mart a data warehouse in his book. So if you read a Ralph Kimball book, you think you're reading about a data warehouse, but you're not. You're reading about a data mart. And that's one reason for the confusion. A second reason for the confusion is that vendors who detested data warehouse at the beginning found that they could sell their product. So the vendors came into the game, the very ones that were trying to push data warehouse off the earth found out they could make sales. And so they started co-opting data warehouse to mean all kinds of things that a data warehouse doesn't mean. And so, and there are a lot of other reasons for the confusion. But
Sure.
the fact that Ralph called a data mart a data warehouse in his books, the fact that vendors choose to bastardize the meaning of data warehouse, those all lead to great confusion.
Do you have any idea why Ralph titled his book Data Warehouse Toolkit?
You'd have to ask Ralph that. I
Okay.
have no idea.
And I don't know. I don't know if I would have no idea even how to get a hold of him these days.
The last I heard of Ralph, and this is 10 years ago, that he is retired and in Hawaii. But I don't even know if Ralph is still alive today.
Right.
I haven't talked with Ralph in a long time.
Are there any other things you hear about the data warehouse that might be off? Maybe things you want to talk about?
Um, Yes. One of the things I hear about data warehouse is that uh, it only applies to structured data. The truth is that the data warehouse was designed for and lived in the world of structured data. But in today's world, we have lots of other kinds of data. We have textual data, we have analog data, we have lots of other kinds of data. And a data warehouse concept can certainly accommodate those needs. So people that think a data warehouse is designed strictly for structured data are limiting themselves to the possibilities. That's one thing. Another thing, um, uh, another concept I hear is that a data warehouse has to reside on a single platform. That is absolutely not true at all. You can have multiple platforms and multiple technologies implement a data warehouse. In fact, when you get into analog data, you cannot start to work with analog data and work on a single platform. And there's some very practical reasons for that. So so those are some of the things that are going around today.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Bill, thanks. Yeah, I just want to keep it pretty short and sweet, but we talked for many hours all week. So, but I think it's important. When I was flying back to Salt Lake, it just, I don't know, it kept bugging me that there's still confusion about data warehouse today. Because it's not a new concept by any means.
Oh,
So
no, it's old.
it's very
It's
old.
interesting. It's old, but it's still as viable and important today as it was the day that it came out. When you stop needing a data warehouse is when you stop needing an enterprise-wide view of data. And when a corporation stops needing enterprise-wide data, it means they have no accountants, no finance, no sales, and no marketing. And if that's your organization, guess what? You don't need a data warehouse. But that present representation of an organization doesn't fit any company, viable company that I know of.
Yeah, I guess at that point you just need a bankruptcy attorney. So
Yes.
awesome. Well, thanks, Bill. It's been always a pleasure talking to you. And well, we'll see you sometime soon. So
Talk to you later.
thank you. Bye bye.